Software development is fun, but it's a challenging art, mainly because it keeps changing. Every day we hear about the newest, hot development framework, meaning that there's always something new to learn for software engineers. One great way to do that is by working with an open source project. But should you work on any open source project? Open source projects are one of the most effective ways to learn new tools and technologies. It keeps you informed about the latest trends in the software world, and more importantly, there are so many of them available online. Therefore, there's always plenty of new projects available for software engineers to work with and to build your portfolio as well. Because there are so many options available, it's not always easy to pick the right open source project to work on. So how do you pick the project that's worth your time and effort? Believe it or not, GitHub has more than 23 million repositories, and buried in that massive pile of repositories are great open source projects that you can start contributing to. GitHub is the primary platform to start browsing for projects to work with, but at the same time, there are many other options to find quality open source projects, so we're going to talk about all that in this video. I'm going to tell you how to find the right open source projects to contribute to and what types of projects can make your resume look better. First, there's more than just the technical aspects. When you're working with open source projects, you'll be working with developers from different experiences, skills, and teamwork traits. While most of us think of project as purely technical, it's equally important to consider the team that you're going to work with. You need to understand that open source project teams need to collaborate with each other to prioritize and get work done. A lot of the important work done is via soft skills between the developers, and it's good to learn more about the teams on the project and their openness to new contributors to avoid any potential toxicity down the road. A lot of the time, the README file on GitHub will have a section about contributing and how a new developer can assist. This is usually a good sign that you won't get flamed as a new developer on a project. The next step is to find the right contributor community. A good starting point while finding a worthwhile open source project to work on is to lurk around online communities that you enjoy. Oftentimes, there will already be a curated list of active open source projects looking for contributors that you can start adding to your shortlist. You can also ask members of the community if they have any suggestions or know of any good projects. I've found subreddits on particular technical topics to be a good starting point to find interesting and high-value projects to look into. A lot of the time, the main project contributors are part of the online community you're viewing, and you can get a good sense on if there are team members that you'd like to work with in your free time. Next, you should consider the project's mission and activity. While looking for a project, it's important to know the problems the project are trying to solve and the goals of creating a new solution. Make sure to contribute to worthwhile solutions and the ones that use modern technology. Also, it's a good idea to check the issue log and the commit log to make sure the project is still being supported and is getting healthy, recent commits from contributors. There's no reason to waste time on a dying project. This way you can build a stronger profile on GitHub and other platforms because you'll be working on technology in demand and one being actively managed. When you know the mission of your project, you'll be able to pick ones that relate directly with your interests. Otherwise, you can have a hard time working on things that you're less familiar with or interested in. Working on an open source project is mainly volunteering your time to a cause, and you need to believe in that cause to stay motivated. So aligning your interests and values with that of an open source project is of high importance. Next, consider the programming language. This is a pretty simple point, but make sure that you're looking for projects that are being developed in a language that you have experience in or looking to get better with. A lot of the more visible, frequently used projects will be supported by some of the best developers in their particular field, so don't treat it as a sandbox project that you can learn a new language in and do a pull request on. If you plan on actively contributing, at least be a competent developer in the chosen language of the project. You can, however, learn a lot by just reading code samples from the project to learn new code styles or new ways to solve problems. Next, understand the project type. After picking the language of your choice, it's time to pick a type of project. When you work on GitHub, there are several curated lists and categories known as collections. For instance, you may come across options like virtual reality, CSS preprocessors, security, text editors, and many others. Here it depends on what area you want to practice or excel as a programmer. Moreover, picking the right type of project has also got to do with the type of software you've worked on previously or where you'd like to grow as a developer in the future. There are several different types of projects, from new frameworks, plugins, libraries, or even new programming languages themselves. Pick a project type that will enhance your skills for future work or career paths. Next, consider the project magnitude. Depending on your skills, experience, and time that you can dedicate to an open source project, you must consider the project magnitude accordingly. Generally, larger software projects like VLC media players require thousands of lines of code, which means more time in front of your computer to get your arms around the project and find a niche corner of the project to contribute to. While sometimes it might be achievable, it can be difficult if you're a student or a full-time professional because you'll have your own projects to work on or other time commitments. As a beginner, it's even more critical to consider the project volume because you cannot possibly work on bigger ones without sacrificing in other areas of your life. If you can pull it off, contributing to a well-known, large-scale project can really boost your portfolio of work and your resume. Just note there are hundreds to thousands of seasoned professionals contributing to these projects typically, so it might be hard to carve yourself out a way to contribute until you have some more project experience under your wings. Oftentimes, you can, however, assist on the less technically intensive parts of the project, like documentation as a new developer. Next, how to contribute to an open source project. Finally, let's talk about how you can contribute to an open source project. Whether you are a pro or a beginner, the easiest place to start on an open source project is GitHub. So first up, get yourself on GitHub if you aren't already a user. If you've never been on GitHub before, here are a couple of things to consider before applying for an open source project. First, learn how to use GitHub. It's pretty simple to use GitHub, but it's always worth exploring the tool before starting an open source collaboration. After you create your account, you can contribute to projects and submit issues too, which means sending an error message to the programs and applications and suggest ways to fix those issues. Next, learn the Git basics. Using Git is the most important element when using GitHub. It's a version control tool that keeps track of different versions of the same project. Because contributors keep making changes to the project, it's important to know the current stage of the project so you can always take on from there. There are plenty of great short courses on learning the basics of Git, so I suggest that you start there. Contributing to open source projects can not only be personally satisfying, but can also boost your career. Watch my video on the top skills needed to be a successful software developer to further accelerate your career. See you in there.